Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Department of Homeland Security continues its latest crackdown in Charlotte, North Carolina. Arrests in the city of nearly 1 million people Saturday as the department cites safety for Americans. A man is arrested for alleged property damage while trying to confront President Trump's former attorney, Alina Habba. And with eyes on questions over a potential for military intervention in Venezuela, President Trump says he's made up his mind regarding the next steps he'll take. Ariane Pazdar is standing by live in Latin America with the latest. Also, how depression can be caused by nutritional imbalances and how targeted nutrient therapy could bring relief. Vital Signs' Brendan Fallon shares insights from a pioneer in the field of nutritional psychiatry.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Federal agents have arrived in Charlotte, North Carolina as part of a nationwide crackdown on illegal immigration. Officials say the operation is targeting criminal undocumented immigrants, and some local leaders say it's causing concern in the community. On Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security said the operation, called Operation Charlotte's Web, is meant to protect public safety. Federal authorities have carried out similar efforts in cities including Chicago, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. Charlotte's mayor, Vi Lyles, and other local officials criticized the raids, saying they're generating fear and uncertainty. DHS has not said how long the operation will last, and federal authorities say they're also ready to help individuals seeking legal guidance on immigration matters. Charlotte is home to roughly 900,000 people, and roughly 17% of them are born outside the U.S. And from the end of a record-setting government shutdown and a major crackdown on sex offenders to foster care improvements, the Trump administration has had a busy week. NTD's Daniel Monahan with your White House Week in Review.
The government shutdown ended after 43 days when President Trump signed the federal spending bill on Wednesday.
And it's an honor now to sign this incredible bill and get our country working again. Thank you.
8 Democrats, including Senator John Fetterman, crossed the aisle to vote with Republicans.
In this situation, we both agree that shutting our government down is wrong for our Commonwealth and for our nation.
Democrats did not secure their push to extend Obamacare subsidies, though they were promised a December vote, one widely seen as unlikely to pass. Vice President J.D. Vance criticized Democrats, saying they could have had the exact same deal 45 days earlier, speaking on Fox News.
They put the American people through a ton of pain and suffering for nothing.
Check and say thank you.
Bonuses of $10,000 were handed out to TSA agents for work during the shutdown who went above and beyond the call of duty.
For stepping up, taking on extra shifts, for showing up each and every day, for serving the American people, and taking seriously the mission.
This week also marked Veterans Day. President Trump issued a proclamation reaffirming support for those who've worn the uniform.
We say the words too often left unsaid. Thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio traveled to Ontario for a G7 foreign ministers meeting. Rubio pushed back against criticism from some U.S. allies over the legality of the U.S. strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean.
I do find it interesting that all these countries want us to send, and supply, for example, nuclear-capable Tomahawk missiles to defend Europe. But when the United States positions aircraft carriers in our hemisphere where we live, somehow that's a problem.
President Trump signed an executive order to improve America's foster care system.
All of this has been made possible by Melania's incredible devotion to America's youth.
This small spark today will ignite a profound and lasting nationwide movement.
The measure is billed as empowering youth transitioning out of foster care with the tools they need for independence and success.
The Bible tells us that one of the measures of any society is how it cares for vulnerable children and orphans.
The President and the First Lady enjoy a moment of rest after a hard day's work, taking in the sounds of the Marine Band. The Department of Homeland Security announced the arrest of more than 150 illegal immigrant sex offenders. Secretary Noem comments on Fox News.
These individuals should have never been in our country to begin with. The fact that they were sexual deviants and perverts, and now we've gotten them off of our streets, it's remarkable, and we need to do more of it.
The operation targeted child predators, rapists, and violent criminal illegal immigrants with convictions including sexual assault of minors, rape, child exploitation, and attempted homicide. In total, more than 230 criminal illegal immigrants were arrested. And the State Department designated 4 left-wing groups based in Europe as foreign terrorist organizations. It says the groups use force against those they identify as opponents of their Marxist and anarchist projects. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Thanks, Daniel, for that report. And after a series of public disagreements between Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Trump, the leader of the Republican Party has announced he'll no longer endorse the Georgia representative. In a Truth post Friday night, Trump accused Greene of going far left. The president said he felt that all Greene did was complain about his policies despite his administration's work on border security, tax cuts, protecting women athletes, rebuilding the U.S. military, and other issues. He added in that post that it began after he suggested she shouldn't run for governor. On X, Greene cited the president's rhetoric, alleging that she's now being contacted by security firms with warnings over her safety over emerging threats against her. Greene says the conflict between herself and the president is over her calls to release the Epstein files. Trump said he'll support the right person who runs in Greene's Georgia district. We'll keep you updated there. And a man has been arrested for alleged property damage while trying to confront President Trump's former attorney. An FBI spokesperson confirmed today that 51-year-old Keith Michael Lisa has been arrested. Lisa is accused of destroying property in the office of New Jersey's top federal prosecutor, Alina Habba. An FBI bulletin on Friday accused Lisa of being in possession of a dangerous weapon inside the court facility. Attorney General Pam Bondi also confirmed the arrest, adding, quote, "No one will get away with threatening or intimidating our great U.S. attorneys or the destruction of their offices." Habba went on Fox News after the arrest and discussed a trend of threats. Check it out.
It is a trend. I've had numerous people, some come to my home. I've had threats online. You know, we saw the 8647. They started the 86 Habba. Somebody got indicted. You may not hear in the news all the threats that every individual in this administration gets, but there are many, and there are too many. One is too many. And
no details on Lisa's potential charges have been released. And President Trump said Friday that he plans to sue the BBC for billions of dollars. That's after the British media outlet published misleading edits of his January 6, 2021 speech.
We'll sue them for anywhere between $1 billion and $5 billion, probably sometime next week.
So you're ready to take legal action?
I think I have to do it. I mean, they've even admitted that they cheated.
The BBC's Panorama documentary spliced together 2 parts of Trump's speech on January 6, 2021. If you recall, the edit changed the meaning of the speech, creating the impression that Trump had explicitly called for violence. The documentary aired just before the U.S. presidential election in 2024. The BBC has retracted the documentary and apologized to Trump, but it did not agree to compensate him. Trump said he plans to speak with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer about the matter over the weekend, noting that Starmer had tried to reach out to him and was very embarrassed by what happened. Coming up, as some expect a military intervention in Venezuela, President Trump says he's made up his mind regarding the next steps he'll take. Ariane Pazdar is standing by live in Latin America with the latest after this. As tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela keep rising, President Trump says he's made up his mind regarding the next steps he'll take. Venezuela's socialist leader, Nicolas Maduro, is now preparing for possible armed conflict with the U.S. NTD's international correspondent, Ariane Pazdar, is standing by live in Latin America. Ariane, good to see you. What exactly did Trump say, and how is Venezuela preparing for possible confrontation with the U.S.?
Hey, Steph, good to see you too. Thank you for having me. Yeah, those are great questions. But first, let me give our viewers a recap of what's been happening off the coast of Venezuela. So the US military started attacking small boats, which it says are trafficking illegal narcotics from Venezuela to the United States. Now, according to the Trump administration, those boats, the drugs on those boats, they could potentially kill hundreds of thousands of Americans if the drugs reach the United States. Now, separately, earlier this month, President Trump ordered an aircraft carrier strike group to the Latin America region. This now brings the total number of US soldiers in the region to 12,000. And on top of that, there's also almost 100 American fighter jets in the region. Now, because of those developments, some people say they think that the US is preparing for military intervention in Venezuela to overthrow socialist leader Nicolas Maduro. President Trump actually just on Friday was asked about that and about his plans, about his next steps regarding Venezuela. Let's take a look at what President Trump said.
I sort of have made up my mind, yeah. I mean, I can't tell you what it would be, but I sort of made up my mind.
What do you say to some of your supporters who might not be excited about another foreign campaign?
Well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I can't tell you what it is, but we made a lot of progress with Venezuela in terms of stopping drugs from pouring in. But we have a Mexico problem. We have a Colombia problem, meaning Colombia, the country. We're doing very well. Drugs coming into our country are greatly slowed, as you can imagine.
Now, Steph, I just want to add real quick that the tensions between the United States and Venezuela, they didn't just start under President Trump. Actually, when Trump returned to office in January, the US already had a bounty on Maduro. Steph?
Right, Arian. And how is Venezuela responding? I mean, the country now has US military presence off its coast. And as you mentioned, there's a bounty on Maduro. I'd imagine he's concerned about these latest developments.
Oh yes, Steph, I would say so for sure. It does seem like he is concerned indeed. Just on Friday, Maduro requested international aid for Venezuela to help stop the growing US influence, the US military presence in the Caribbean. Maduro says the US is trying to start a war in the region. Now, Washington, of course, says that it's just trying to stop the boats of those narco traffickers. And besides Maduro's appeal for aid, he's now also actively preparing for direct conflict with the United States. Just this week, Maduro signed into law a new national defense framework. He's uniting Venezuela's civilian and military forces. And he's calling on his people, on the people of Venezuela. Maduro is saying that they should, quote, prepare for armed struggle to defend Venezuela and its sovereignty. And he's also preparing a national military police exercise soon. Let's now listen to Maduro and what he said while signing this new law earlier this week. Let's take a look.
If we, as a republic, as a people, must go to armed struggle to defend this sacred heritage of the liberators, we must be ready to win, to triumph through the path of patriotism and courage. So, I proceed to sign and execute the law.
Now, I just want to add here real quick, Steph, that it's widely believed that Maduro wasn't actually re-elected as the president and that he cheated during last year's presidential elections. That's what a lot of Venezuelan citizens think. And that's also what the United States and other European nations came to the conclusion to after official investigations. They concluded that Maduro did indeed cheat. I mean, just ask any Venezuelan citizen you might know. Chances are, I mean, not of course, but chances are that they want Maduro to go. So my point in this, the point I'm trying to make is that most Venezuelan citizens, from what I've seen, are not actually standing behind Maduro in this whole back and forth with the United States. Steph?
And Arian, in other Latin American news, I heard over 100 police officers are injured in Mexico after protests yesterday.
That's right, Steph. So what happened is that a group called Generation Z, they took to Mexico's National Palace for an anti-violence protest. This came after earlier this month an anti-violence mayor was killed in broad daylight during an event. This might have been done by the cartel. The cartel in Mexico is, after all, responsible for much of the violence, which is partly what Generation Z was trying to protest, right? The cartel violence. But now what happened, Steph, is that Mexico's opposition, they saw this protest happening and they kind of used it. They then invited their own supporters. They invited anti-government protesters. They invited opposition supporters to join the anti-violence protest and kind of take over. So after some time, this whole anti-violence protest developed into an anti-government protest, which was also against Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum. So according to Mexico's government, the situation then escalated and 120 people are now injured. And 100 of those, as you said, yes, were police officers. Reportedly, 40 of them had to be hospitalized. Let's now listen to President Claudia Sheinbaum and what she had to say about these protests. Let's take a look.
There was a demonstration in Mexico City where they say that young people were marching, but in reality there were very few young people, and in violent manner they pulled down some fences and broke windows. We say no to violence. If you have a disagreement, you have to demonstrate in a peaceful way.
Also, the police, of course, did take action against some of those violent protesters. According to officials, 20 people had to be arrested. Steph?
Many updates, and great to have you out there on the ground with those updates for us. Arian Pazdar, thank you so much. Meanwhile, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth on Thursday named the operation narco-terrorists in the Western Hemisphere that the Trump administration is going after. It's called Operation Southern Spear. Joining us for insight is Kervin O'Coin, former lead intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance coordinator for the U.S. Army. Good to have you with us today, Kervin. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think this is a very important discussion.
It sure is. Love to get your insights. What is the scope of this operation and what makes it different from previous counter-narcotics operations in the region?
Yeah, well, first of all, what we've seen now, right, is the USS Gerald Ford is now in the Caribbean, what is called US Southcom, or the United States Southern Command. And so what is Operation Southern Spear? These terms are direct terms. They are tangible terms. So a lot of this is a funding, but it is an operational control situation here. This gives U.S. Southcom and the commanders of U.S. Southcom operational control of the USS Gerald Ford, that carrier strike group that is coming in, and now decisions can be made based off of those commanders in the sea, on the ground, within Latin America, and so they can make the decisions. They can make the decisions on what is going to happen within Venezuela.
And we're all watching this closely, as we just reported earlier. There's murmurings of potential action within Venezuela, but particularly for this operation, how does intelligence gathering actually work in a mission like this? How do you find those smugglers or threats in the ocean?
Oh, that's a fantastic question, and I say it's a fantastic question because it's a lot of my background. So how does this work? From a targeting perspective, which is what we're talking about here, targeting narco-terrorists, what you're going to want to do whenever you are targeting very quickly and you are trying to go to what we call the F3EA cycle, which is find, fix, finish, exploit, and analyze. You need to get to that find portion very quickly. So you are going to find very low-level individuals who are smuggling drugs. And that's what is happening right now. And what we talk about when we fix is what is happening when we understand where they are traveling. So these boats that are traveling across the Caribbean, you fix them based off of the intelligence, whether that is, and a lot of it is signals intelligence, which is at a very high classification. I can't get into a lot of the information that's going on within that, but as a SIGINT analyst, I was in the Army a SIGINT analyst. This is seen by many commanders as the premier type of intelligence. If you have signals intelligence on a group, on these narco-terrorists, and you go to strike them, that is seen as the premier fix on these individuals. So you've got the find, the fix, and then the finish is what we're seeing with these strikes on these boats. So that's how we're really getting quickly into these strikes on these narco-terrorist boats, and that's that entire process from start to finish.
And what are the primary challenges in intelligence gaps or, targeting these groups? That we have seen many more of them being targeted, but is there anything missing there currently?
Yeah, you're always going to have gaps. Intelligence gaps happen. I would say this is very similar to what I did from a counterterrorist perspective. So in gathering that information, are there mistakes that are going to happen? Unfortunately, yes. Do we know that has happened right now? I would say we don't have confirmation that strikes have hit anyone other than perceived narco-terrorists, but there are definitely gaps within this. And so that doesn't mean that, the United States just goes and does whatever they want and they go to strike. You have to be very specific. And I've been in these situations from a counterterrorist perspective where we had the information, we had SIGINT, signals intelligence, HUMINT confirming on the ground, but there were civilians outside, collateral civilians outside of that, and we were not allowed to strike on that. So I will say the U.S. military, even this administration, is very careful on what they are going to do because you do not want to make a mistake and cause a global conflict because of that.
Well, it's great to get your insights, especially as the administration ramps up this operation. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more strikes in the future. Kervin O'Coin, thank you so much for joining us this Sunday.
Thank you so much for having me. And as always, stay safe out there.
And next, President Trump says he's open to a deal that would give Saudi Arabia some of America's most advanced fighter jets, the F-35s. The comments came as he heads to a high-profile meeting with the Saudi Crown Prince next week, where they're expected to sign new economic and defense agreements. Aboard Air Force One on Friday, the president told reporters that Saudi Arabia is looking to buy a lot of F-35 stealth fighters made by U.S. contractor Lockheed Martin. The F-35 is the U.S. military's cutting-edge stealth fighter designed to evade detection and gather high-tech intelligence in the air. But the potential jet sale is raising some concerns. A recent Pentagon intelligence report from the New York Times on Thursday warns that China could gain access to sensitive F-35 technology if the deal goes forward. On top of the potential deal, Trump is expressing hope that Saudi Arabia will eventually join the Abraham Accords. It consists of the U.S. brokered deals that helped normalize relations between Israel and several Muslim-majority nations. We'll keep you updated on that. Heavy rainfall has been hitting Southern California, including Los Angeles and San Diego, but has pivoted northward and inland across the Southwest, including areas of Arizona, Nevada, and Utah. Southern California saw up to 2 inches of rainfall on Friday and Saturday. There were quite a few rainfall records broken across Southern California. 3.18 inches of rain fell in Oxnard, breaking the 1934 record of 1.8 inches. At Santa Barbara Airport, 2.9 inches fell, breaking the 1952 record of 1.92 inches. With 6 inches of rainfall over the last 3 days, this was the wettest 3-day stretch in the month of November. Some areas saw street flooding and slick road conditions, and others saw minor rock falls and debris flows. Trees fell in several cities across the region. Much of California and parts of Nevada and Arizona are expected to pick up at least another inch of rain through Monday night. And still to come, how depression can be caused by nutritional imbalance and how targeted nutrient therapy can bring relief. Vital Signs' Brendan Fallon shares insights from a pioneer in the field of nutritional psychiatry. Stay with us for that. Welcome back to NTD. I'm joined in studio now by NTD health correspondent and host of Vital Signs, Brendan Fallon. Vital Signs offers natural and nutritional ways of optimizing our health. Brendan, it's nice to see you.
Great to see you, Steph.
What do you have for us today?
Today, hopefully to bring some message of hope to people dealing with depression. I think the common treatment many people receive, they're starting to have depression symptoms. It's quite common they'll receive antidepressants. And this works for some people. Some people get great benefit from it, but not everyone. And the doctor I spoke to, he's been, for 30 years, he's been researching nutritional treatments for mental health disorders, behavioral disorders, and had really outstanding results. And it's great news because you don't necessarily need to take antidepressants. For some people, they can get a benefit from different nutrients. And he actually started out looking into behavioral disorders and working with prisoners, doing research on prisoners, and seeing what might be at play in terms of their neurotransmitters, not just bad parenting or trauma, but some kind of inborn evil nature, but looking at what might be going on with these messaging signals between the neurons in the brain that may be causing bad behavior. And that's what this first clip, he's talking about that as a start.
All right.
We've seen, my colleagues and mine, more than 10,000 cases of extreme behavior, including more than 800 felons in prison. And I've interviewed and tested people like Charles Manson, Richard Speck, and I've worked with coroners and with severe, cases. Whenever there was, at one point, I was helping with forensics, trying to help understand why people did what they did. And that's how I started. And it sort of grew into focusing on the brain, understanding what really, what genetic predispositions do these people have, and can they be corrected? And the answer is a lot of this is inborn, not bad parenting or lack of love or traumatic experiences. They can aggravate a problem, but the basic tendency is often inborn and involves misbehaving neurotransmitters. We found there are ways to correct that in addition to what drugs are trying to do, medications. We found that we can really help a lot of these people. Depression's a good example. I had a database, one of the world's biggest databases on chemistry for depressive people. And I found that depression is not a single condition. It's an umbrella term that includes 5 completely different disorders with different misbehaving neurotransmitters and requiring a completely different treatment. I presented that at an annual meeting of the American Psychiatric Association a few years ago and explained to them that no, it's not always serotonin and you don't just need an antidepressant, and that only fits one of the 5 categories.
So interesting. I haven't heard that before about the different disorders within depression. Yeah, did he go into much detail about that?
In our full interview, yeah, Dr. Walsh talks about the specific biochemical causes for different types of depression. So it's not just the idea that you have depression, you get prescribed a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, an SSRI, and it's going to affect the amount of serotonin that's in the synapse between the neurons. This is going to improve your depression for everyone. That simply isn't the case. We know that. And so it kind of makes sense. Different things work for different people. Some people benefit from SSRI treatment, different treatments, different drugs, and some people don't. So it makes sense that there are different things, different biochemical causes of depression.
Well, they say food is medicine, so it's exciting to hear that there's more information that you've got coming about what potential solutions there could be out there.
Sure. And food is an important part of the equation because having the right food can bring down inflammation and oxidation that impacts the brain heavily. But what Dr. Walsh is talking about is largely testing to see what kind of deficiencies people might have with certain nutrients in the body. It's a very targeted, precise method. And then he's able to supplement what's missing or to balance out what someone might have too much of. This next clip, he's giving an example of where someone has too much of something, copper in this case, And postpartum depression is such a common thing that so many women suffer with this after childbirth. And in many cases, it comes down to elevated copper in the blood. And this is what he's talking about in this next soundbite.
There's one that has to do with metal metabolism. 70% of all people who get a diagnosis of depression have extraordinary elevated copper and low zinc levels. This directly affects two of the major neurotransmitters and causes extraordinarily low dopamine levels and extraordinarily high norepinephrine and adrenaline levels. And these are the people who have hormonal problems. For example, postpartum depression. Virtually 90% of the cases we've seen, and we've seen 800 cases of postpartum depression, 80 to 90% of them, that's really their only real problem. And during a pregnancy, a woman's copper level, which normally is around 100, typically goes up to about 220, and that's healthy. The baby needs that for what they call angiogenesis, for the baby to develop properly. And the problem is that some people have an inability, a genetic inability for the copper to come back down after the pregnancy. And that's a recipe for anxiety, depression, in some cases psychosis, postpartum psychosis sometimes, and it's correctable. Usually, I think we have 90+% success in outcome studies for those people. So the point is that every type of depression is different, and you can't just throw antidepressants at these people. You're going to help some of them, and yeah, the studies will show you have some efficacy, but it's not great efficacy.
So, yeah, this is, as I was saying, this is quite a precise method. It's not the case you find out you're lacking or have too much of something. You go and buy supplements and you take them yourself. Dr. Walsh has a network of doctors. There's doctors internationally trained in his approach. And you can watch this full video. I know you're going to introduce the link, Stephanie, after I finish talking, and people can check this full video out, where he talks in detail about these different types of depression and where you can find out about testing to see what imbalance a person might have.
Good to note that. Thank you so much for your time today, Brendan Fallon. And to see that full vital signs interview with Dr. Walsh, just go to your web browser and enter ept.ms/nutrient-therapy. Now, it's been many years since overinvestment into the rise of the internet produced the dot-com bubble and crash. Now, experts are noticing similarities with the quick rise of artificial intelligence investing into stocks and startups. NTD's Sean Marshall has a look into what's going on.
There's no playbook for how to handle the explosion of AI stock, according to the CEO of Deutsche Bank's $1.3 trillion money management wing. Concerns that the AI sector is a bubble ready to pop are growing.
Investors should be cautious, not afraid.
Analysts have drawn comparisons between the AI investment craze and the 1990s dot-com bubble.
We currently are in the middle of an AI bubble where stock prices have grown a lot faster than actual profit has. Valuations are currently inflated based off of AI hype, and ultimately prices need to adjust and level out eventually to match reality and actual earnings present.
The recent artificial intelligence rally is different from the dot-com bubble. Today's boom is driven by everyday retail investors, not institutions. Questions have been rising about how much higher AI favorites can go following their already high gains.
Buying during hyped up periods means buying at the top, and investors should really be ignoring the hype and focusing more on diversity instead of chasing whatever's hot in the given moment. Tech trends, they come in waves, and when AI hype fades, a new emerging popular technology will come with hype surrounding it.
At the start of this month, Palantir was sporting a rise of nearly 174% for the year so far. The so-called Magnificent Seven, including Nvidia and Meta, have seen their share prices soar, fueling fears about the scale of market exposure to just a few names. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Coming up, the Transportation Department and the FAA are lowering mandatory flight reductions, but some challenges still remain. How should travelers prepare for potential disruption if you're traveling by air this time of year? We hear tips from a travel blogger after the break. Welcome back. Travel over the Thanksgiving period may have taken a turn for the better. The Transportation Department and the FAA said Friday they were lowering mandatory flight reductions from 6% to 3%, and that went into effect yesterday. Joining us with insight on how to get around if you're traveling by air at this time of year is Jen Ruiz, a travel blogger and author, as well as a travel content creator on Instagram. You can find her at Jen on a Jet Plane. Good to have you with us today, Jen. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, now your reaction to the latest, the reduction in reductions.
So it's a positive change, but it doesn't mean that we're out of the woods. We're heading into what is already the busiest travel season of the year. And so really people still have to prepare for delays. There's still a 3% reduction in flights from these major airports. So the same precautions apply. Whenever possible, try to get a direct flight first thing in the morning. It's least likely to be delayed. You don't have that added chance of possibly missing that connection. Take your own bag. Don't check it. Take it carry on. That way you can be flexible if you do need to make any last minute changes. Make sure that your information is updated on the app of the airline that you're flying with. I know we all have a lot of apps, but make sure that you have the app for your airline downloaded so that you can be the first to know if something happens and you need to make alternate arrangements.
And there have been so many changes to policies in air travel. Are there any others that are really standing out to you that are still affecting travelers in the near period?
In general, I think we need to know what are travelers entitled to, right? What are the laws that currently protect travelers in the US? And unfortunately, there's really not that many. If you are flying to or from the EU, there are enhanced protections for the delay based on the length of your flight and how long it's delayed for. But for now in the US, you're entitled to a full refund if your flight does not move forward and you choose not to take an alternate flight. You are entitled to water, a snack, the ability to deplane if you're held on the tarmac for 3 or more hours. And you are entitled to lost luggage delays, protections, damaged luggage delays, and protections as well. But other than that, things like overnight accommodations, any snacks at the airport, those are all going to vary by airline. And you can see all of those under the airline customer service dashboard that's put together by the DOT, although notably FAA delays and things are not necessarily covered. It's more for their controllable delays that the airline has.
Your best advice for travelers managing with cancellations and in that moment, what they should do?
So the first thing that you want to do is act quickly. You don't want to wait because you have to think that there's going to be a whole other plane of people that are also looking for alternate arrangements and limited seats in the other flights. So you want to move fast. If you see a long line at the airport, you don't necessarily have to make that line to make changes. You can do a lot, like I mentioned, on the app or even calling in, even on social media. You can reach a different customer service team that way. And I've been able to get some forms filled out, some issues with lost luggage handled through social media. So use all of the avenues available to you. And if you find that you're being delayed, try something different because time is of the essence.
Now, I did notice some news just this past week saying that the Trump administration blocked a plan to force airlines to pay customers for canceled flights. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, this has been something that has been trying to be passed for a long time because, as I mentioned, it's something that the EU has had for a long time and it works well for them. These are long established, codified compensation rules that we do not have. We don't have those similar consumer protections here in the US where you think that we would. And so we know that it is possible to have legislation that allows for compensation in the event of a delay, but it's something that was proposed by the prior administration. It's something that was shut down by this administration. And it's something that it feels like is constantly an uphill battle, even though we've seen a working model of it elsewhere, because it's just not necessarily in the airline's interests. That's why I mentioned if you do have a flight that's coming to or from the EU, you could be potentially covered by different regulations.
Great to have your advice today, Jen Ruiz. Thank you so much, and safe travel to you if you're heading out for Thanksgiving.
To you as well. Thank you.
And next, President Trump is pushing for Americans to get $2,000 checks thanks to tariff revenues. NTD's Don Moss spoke with Daniel Lacaille about this issue. Lacaille is the chief economist at Tressis and an international financial analyst, also the author of Freedom or Equality.
So can we talk about the order of payments here? Because you just heard President Trump says he's going to pay households and then he's going to pay down the national debt.
Well, obviously, I think that the plan is to first get the public accounts in order, and then look for the opportunity to use part of these revenues to reduce the challenges that some of the families in the United States are facing. No, and obviously that $2,000 check is a very good idea once you take into account that the first and foremost objective has to be to control the national debt, and the national debt is obviously number one priority, has to be reducing the deficit to a sustainable level. I think that all those efforts are being taken, and obviously if he comes, if the tariff revenues come to the figures that he has mentioned, about $1 trillion, etc., that would obviously be plenty to reduce the deficit to by less than half of what it was, and at the same time pay these $2,000 checks.
So Daniel, if this in fact happens, where people get $2,000 checks, do you think that's going to be a boost for the U.S. economy?
Obviously, there's always a debate about the impact of these checks. Now we remember what happened with the stimulus checks of the COVID period. No, I think that what they do is more to provide a certain level of relief to citizens that are either entering into too much debt or that have some financial difficulties. So I personally don't care if people are going to use it for saving, to put it in the stock market, or to pay down debt. I think that all of those are perfectly positive outcomes. No, I think that what is important is that once the deficit is under control and once the level of debt of the United States to GDP is declining, and obviously if the economy is growing at a 3.8% and it brings down the deficit to half in dollar terms what it was, obviously that would be the case, then that would be a boost to the economy. But we cannot expect a massive increase in consumption. I am always aware that a tremendous number of people are going to be using it to pay down credit card debt, which is perfectly fine with me, or to invest in the stock market, which is also perfectly fine with me. I think that what is important is that those revenues that are coming from the trade agreements are used to the best possible solution. No, so on the one hand, if you think about this, bringing down the deficit means that the tax cuts that have been implemented can be increased. So that is a positive for citizens and their affordability. No, and number two, if they on top of that get a stimulus check, that can certainly be a relief. But I would consider it from that perspective. First, bringing down the deficit. Second, obviously, looking at what to do with these enormous, absolutely, and much higher than expected, to be fairly honest, revenues coming from tariffs.
So you raised the issue of stimulus checks. So how is this different from the stimulus checks that we got during the pandemic that actually fueled inflation?
Oh, absolutely different. It's a great question, because a lot of people say, oh, this is going to drive inflation higher. No, because the stimulus checks were paid with newly created money, with new deficit, with more money printing, more government spending, more debt. Okay, so and this is something that is sharing with citizens an external revenue. So this is not newly created money. This is not inflationary, and it's a huge difference. Big difference to print money to provide a stimulus that obviously then backlashes and boomerangs into inflationary effects, than to use revenues that are coming from abroad to relieve those citizens that are in a more difficult position.
Well, okay, Daniel, it's always enjoyable to hear your valuable insight. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much, Don. Have a great day.
And stay with us, and we'll bring you more news right after this break.